After 5 years of being in love with William, I finally said yes to his marriage proposal. But just as he was sliding the ring onto my finger, something unimaginable happened. I found myself transported to the future. I awoke 7 years into our marriage. On this particular day, a woman William had been secretly seeing barged into our house and immediately set her sights on my wedding ring. Without hesitation, William, his demeanor cold and unrecognizable, commanded, "Chloe, take off the ring and give it to her." The unfamiliar look in his eyes left me no doubt. I really had leaped into the future. Fighting to keep my composure, I forced a smile and asked, "William, is this the future you promised me? Affairs, mistresses, and treating me like I don't exist?" William furrowed his brow and looked at me as though I were speaking nonsense. "Chloe, what's wrong with you now?" he asked, his tone laced with irritation. Hearing him dismiss me as crazy, I recalled a saying I once read: "A woman goes through stages in her life. A young girl, a newlywed, a resentful wife, a mad woman, and finally, silence." It stung to realize that in just 7 years, I'd already reached the madwoman stage. But the Chloe of 7 years ago? She was strong, confident, and always ready to bounce back from whatever life threw her way. Determined not to be defeated, I took off the ring and held it out. As William reached for it, I let it slip from my hand. The plain band hit the floor with a sharp clink before rolling away. "Oops," I said, covering my mouth in mock surprise. My hand slipped. William's glare could have pierced through steel, but I only smirked. Then, I turned my gaze to the woman standing beside him. I recognized her immediately. Ava, a junior from William's department back in college. Back then he'd talked about her, always with disdain for her lack of wit. And yet here she was now, standing by his side, soaking up his affection. How ironic. "Don't you like it?" I said to Ava, nodding toward the ring on the floor. "Go fetch it. Isn't that what dogs do when their owners toss them a bone?" Ava's face darkened for a moment before she quickly replaced her expression with a mask of innocence. Looking up at William with teary eyes, she whimpered, "William, I never wanted Sister Chloe's ring. I just thought it didn't suit her anymore and might embarrass you in public. I was only trying to help." As if to prove her sincerity, she slid a massive diamond ring from her finger and offered it to me. "Look, Sister Chloe," she said, her voice sickly sweet, "I already had this ring prepared for you. I thought it would suit you better." My eyes lingered on the glittering 10-carat diamond. A memory stirred. Back in our 3rd year together, William and I had walked past a jewelry store late at night. Through the window, I'd spotted this exact ring, its brilliance captivating me instantly. "Do you like it?" William had asked at the time. I'd nodded eagerly. "Yes, I love it." He'd pulled me close, his voice full of promise. "I'll work hard, and one day, I'll buy it for you. It'll be yours." Now, with his fortune worth hundreds of millions, that promise would have been so easy for him to keep. But he hadn't bought the ring for me. He'd given it to someone else. Smiling coldly, I studied Ava. "Is this second-hand?" I asked with mock concern. "I'd hate for it to come with diseases." Ava's face paled at the implication, but she quickly forced her eyes to water, as if on cue. "Chloe, that's enough," William barked. Ava was just being thoughtful. "How can you be so ungrateful? Apologize to her. Now." His commanding tone shattered any lingering illusions of the man I thought I knew. Suppressing the bitterness rising in my chest, I stared at him. "William, have you lost your mind? You bring your mistress into my home in the middle of the night, take my things, and now you want me to apologize? What exactly should I apologize for? Should I feel bad for being the wronged wife?" His face darkened. "Chloe, I'm warning you. Watch your tone." "Or what?" I shot back. "Are you planning to throw me out? Go ahead and try. I'm not the Chloe who'll let you walk all over her anymore." William's patience seemed to snap. His jaw clenched as he delivered his final blow. "This is your last chance, Chloe. Apologize to Ava, or I'll call the lawyer to start divorce proceedings." Chloe looked at William confidently as she spoke. His certainty that she would bow her head and admit her mistake rather than divorce him was almost laughable. 7 years of this marriage had made her realize how pitifully she had been living. "Don't bother the lawyer so late," she said, her tone calm. "I'll handle it myself." William's confusion was evident. "Chloe, what did you say?" "Divorce," she repeated with a smile. This time, he heard her clearly. His pupils shrank, and his expression flickered as if he were seeing a stranger. Chloe didn't give him time to process or reconsider. She retrieved a pen and paper from the study and began drafting a divorce agreement. Her background in law made the process seamless. Luckily, their lack of children simplified things. It was merely a matter of dividing assets. While she wasn't certain of William's current net worth, she knew she was entitled to half of what they'd gained during their marriage. After about 10 minutes, she handed the agreement to him. "Read it. If it's fine, sign it." William scanned the document quickly, but his reaction wasn't about its contents. "Chloe, what game are you playing now?" Confused, she asked. "Game? It's just a divorce. What's there to play? You really want to end this marriage?" he asked, studying her with suspicion. Her patience was wearing thin. "Sign it, and you'll know how serious I am." Finally, William picked up the pen and signed his name. His handwriting was harsher and more chaotic than it had been 7 years ago, reflecting the person he had become. Chloe followed, signing her name carefully, marking the end of their 7-year marriage. "This house is mine now," she said firmly. "You can leave." William took Ava with him, leaving Chloe alone in the grand villa. She looked around at the lavish furnishings and designer pieces. William had provided her with a life of luxury, but the warmth of a real home had long vanished. A wave of sadness washed over her as she realized how drastically the man who once cherished her had changed. Pain stabbed her chest, and before she knew it, she coughed up blood, staining the pristine carpet. That night, Chloe realized she might not survive much longer. She awoke in the hospital, saved by kind strangers. There she learned the devastating truth. She was in the advanced stages of cancer and had only a short time left. Fate crossed her path with William again at the hospital, where he was accompanying Ava for an appointment. When he saw her, his expression was unreadable. "Chloe, are you following me?" he asked arrogantly. She gave him a disbelieving look and walked away, unwilling to engage. But William grabbed her arm, his tone condescending. "Chloe, I gave you a chance. You were the one who wanted a divorce. If you've changed your mind and want my forgiveness, it won't come easily." She pulled her arm free. "William, what fantasy are you living in? Where did you get the idea that I regret anything?" His frown deepened. "You're not here for me?" "No." Her curt reply seemed to crack the confidence in his gaze. Yet, even then, he clung to the belief that her world revolved around him.
But he seemed to be good at making assumptions and thought that I should revolve around him. He said in a tone as if he could see through me, "Heh, Chloe, do you think I'll believe you? Don't forget that back then, you wouldn't even." Hearing these words, my eyebrows twitched uncontrollably. What on earth had happened in these 7 years that would make a person like me? I suppressed thousands of questions in my heart and looked at William. I said calmly, "William, it's undeniable that we were once in love. I also loved you as if my life depended on it and thought that I couldn't live without you even if the sky fell. But William, people grow up. No one will stay where they are and wait for others. You've changed, and so have I. Divorcing you is the most correct decision I've made in my life. I won't regret it, and I can't regret it. You don't have to test me over and over again, unless you're the one who regrets it." William pursed his lips. After a brief silence, he suddenly chuckled. "How could I? I had said everything that needed to be said. I didn't care how he would deal with it." I walked away. Just unexpectedly, right after getting rid of William, I turned around and ran into Ava. She stood there as if she had been waiting for me. As soon as she saw me, she touched her belly. "Sister Chloe, I'm pregnant." "It's William's baby." Another useless sentence. I didn't want to pay attention to her. "Sister Chloe, if the baby in your belly back then had been born, it should be 3 years old by now. TSK. What a pity. However, you probably don't know yet that William left you on the overpass just because he answered my phone call at that time." I suddenly turned my head to look at Ava. "What did you say?" Ava pretended to be surprised and covered her mouth. "Oh. Sister Chloe, you really didn't know?" Although I didn't know exactly what had happened back then, it didn't affect my speed of slapping this bitch at all. I quickly stepped forward and raised my hand to give Ava 2 hard slaps. When William rushed over and saw this scene, he immediately grabbed my hand. "Chloe, What are you doing? This scumbag still had the nerve to ask me. I broke free from his restraint and slapped him across the face. I'm hitting her, not you. Are you butting in on purpose? William and I had been together for many years. Quarrels and conflicts were common, but it had never reached the point of getting physical. This slap on William's face made his face turn livid. The look in his eyes when he looked at me seemed as if he wanted to devour me. Ava jumped out excitedly. Sister Chloe, you've gone too far. How could you hit William and even slap his face? If this is photographed by the media and posted online, how will William manage the company in the future? I quickly came to my senses. It's none of my business. You. In front of William, Ava didn't dare to confront me head-on out of concern. She then turned around, with red eyes, and complained to William, William, it's all my fault. I originally wanted to share the news of my pregnancy with Sister Chloe, but I don't know which sentence irritated Sister Chloe, and she came over and hit me. And even got you involved. William was silent for a moment after hearing Ava's words. But strangely this time, he didn't stand up for Ava and come to trouble me. Instead, he said to Ava, since you're pregnant, stop crying. Come on, I'll take you home. With that, William didn't even glance at me and left with Ava. I stared at William's back and recalled what Ava had just said. Could the miscarriage really have something to do with William? Was his reaction just now because he felt guilty? As soon as I walked out of the hospital, I felt pain. I hadn't walked a few steps before I was sweating profusely from the pain. I gritted my teeth and walked to the small grocery store across the street. I bought a bottle of mineral water to take the painkillers. Little girl, taking medicine with cold water? It won't work. Come here, and I'll get you a cup of hot water. Big Mia in the store immediately stopped me when she saw what I was doing. She filled a disposable cup with hot water and handed it to me. I first took a look at the steaming water in front of me and then at Big Mia's kind face. Somehow, my eyes swelled and grew sore out of my control. I didn't cry when I found out that William was having an affair. I didn't cry when I divorced William. I didn't cry when I learned that I was dying, but I just couldn't help crying in front of a stranger. How useless I was. Big Mia looked at my red-rimmed eyes and didn't laugh at me. Drink it quickly before it gets cold. After taking the medicine, I didn't feel that much pain anymore. Thank you. Big Mia waved her hand. You're welcome. Go home early and have a good sleep. I sniffed my sore nose and nodded. Okay. As soon as I turned around, I discovered a bitter truth. I didn't have a home 7 years ago. 7 years later, I still didn't have a home. I hesitated for a long time on the spot. I still drove along the route in my memory, and after a 4-hour interprovincial drive, I finally arrived at the entrance of the neighborhood in my memory. I stayed in the car and looked at the big words, Happy 10,000 Families Neighborhood, hanging on the entrance of the neighborhood. Memories flowed back to the summer when I was 18. That was the first time I had traveled far away. I took a bus from my hometown town and then a train in the county town. After a whole day and night, I found this place according to the address on the note. When I got here, the courage that had driven me all the way disappeared in an instant. I carried my patched school bag and was as timid as a newly born chick. I didn't dare to take a step forward or backward. Until I found the familiar yet strange person among the people coming in and out. I licked my dry lips and opened my mouth. Mia. My voice was so low that only I could hear it. Mia's figure, without even looking back, was about to disappear. Mia. I got anxious and desperately wanted to catch her, so I shouted loudly. Everyone named Mia around me subconsciously looked at me. My Mia was no exception. She turned around. The moment our eyes met, I forced a big smile. And her eyes changed from being strange to being familiar, then to surprise and finally to impatience. She quickly came up to me, didn't say a word, and forcefully dragged me outside. She didn't stop until there was no one around. She turned around and shouted loudly, Why are you here? Who told you to come? I stared blankly at Mia's face. I remembered that she didn't seem like this before. She used to have dimples when she smiled. Was it your father? Did he tell you to come to me? Speak. Did he tell you to come to me to ask for money? I just got distracted for a moment, and Mia grabbed me and shook me vigorously. Speak. Say something. The hysterical voice seemed to pierce my eardrums. No, I came here by myself. Hearing that no one had sent me here, Mia regained some of her sanity, but she still asked with high vigilance, You came by yourself? What do you want from me? I came. Before I could finish speaking, Mia interrupted me. I'm telling you, I've already divorced your father, and you were awarded to him. I left the marriage with nothing. I have no obligation to support you. If he doesn't support you, you can sue him in court. Her cold words were like a sharp sword, stabbing a big hole in my heart without hesitation. It was bleeding, but I couldn't feel the pain for a moment. You're overthinking it. I just happened to come on a trip with my classmates and just happened to pass by this neighborhood. I pursed my lips tightly and straightened my back. I let Mia's suspicious eyes sweep back and forth on my face. She was wondering whether I was sent by my father or not. After a while, Mia spoke again, and this time her tone softened. Chloe, don't blame Mia for being cruel. If it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't have married your father. I finally got out of that hellhole and just started to have a peaceful life. So don't come to me anymore, okay? I opened my mouth. Okay. My voice was still low this time, but Mia heard it clearly. She smiled. Finally, she smiled. Just like in my memory, there were 2 dimples at the corners of her mouth when she smiled. Here, take this 50 yuan and go buy something to eat with your classmates. She reached into her pocket, took out a crumpled banknote, and stuffed it into my palm forcefully. Then she walked away without looking back. Watching her leave, I slowly murmured the purpose of my coming. Mia, I've been admitted to university. Miss Mia, the spare ribs are on discount today. Do you want to buy some? Sure. Are there any corns? It just so happens that my daughter is on holiday from school today. I'll make her some corn and spare rib soup. Through the car window, I saw that long-missed figure again. Yes. By the way, which grade is you're in this year? She's in senior 3 already. After the spring festival, she'll be preparing for the college entrance examination. When mentioning her, Mia's face was full of happiness and pride. Looking at her carefully choosing at the vegetable stand, I forced a smile. So she could also be a good mother. When she unconsciously turned her head and looked in this direction, I stepped on the accelerator and left without looking back. On the way back to Jiangcheng, I received the news of a university class reunion. I didn't have much interest at first. But I was also curious about what everyone would be like now. On the day of the reunion, not long after I entered the private room, William also arrived. And he brought Ava with him. The people who had been chatting animatedly just now suddenly fell silent. A few seconds later, someone asked me in a low voice, Chloe, what's going on between you and William? Isn't he your husband? Why did he bring another woman? I explained, we got divorced. You two got divorced? Ah? When did that happen? I was quite calm. Just a while ago. Seeing that I didn't want to talk about it, everyone didn't dare to ask more questions. Moreover, considering William's current identity and status, they didn't dare to gossip in front of him. I explained, we got divorced. You two got divorced? Ah? When did that happen? I was quite calm. Just a while ago. I didn't expect that William, who was regarded as a filial and good man in everyone's eyes, would also have an affair. Now that I think about it, it was a wise move for you to have the abortion back then. Otherwise, for the sake of a child, you would have suffered a lot in this marriage. I was biting a piece of pastry when I almost choked upon hearing these words. Grace immediately brought me a glass of water and made me drink it. After I caught my breath, I grabbed her hand and said, What did you say? I had the abortion myself. Grace looked at me in surprise. Yes, I accompanied you to the hospital at that time. So the miscarriage of the child wasn't an accident. It was something I did myself. What's wrong? Grace looked at me with confusion. I couldn't tell Grace that I was Chloe from 7 years ago. What happened in these 7 years was a blank to me, nothing. I just had a little wine and my memory is a bit fuzzy, I casually made up an excuse. Chloe, don't be too sad. A scumbag like William isn't worth your sadness. If I had known he was such a person, I shouldn't have let you agree to marry him back then. Grace felt indignant for me. When she cursed William, she didn't hold back at all. Until William showed up in front of us with a glass of red wine. Now that William was in a superior position, he exuded an imposing air of a powerful person who could intimidate others without getting angry. Grace immediately shut her mouth when she saw him. Chloe, I remembered that I still have some work to do, so I won't accompany you for now. I understood her. After all, her current job was related to William's company. Okay. Seeing that I was standing with William, the others automatically moved a bit further away. I hadn't seen William for a few days, and it seemed that he had forgotten the unpleasantness between us. He looked at me for a while before speaking. You've lost weight. Haven't you been eating well? I wasn't the kind of person who would forget being hurt just because of a little kindness. William, look clearly. I'm not Ava. Don't act cheap in front of me. I wanted to leave, but William blocked my way. Chloe, can't you talk properly? William, have you just met me today? Or do you think that the slap last time wasn't enough and you need me to give you another one? William was successfully provoked and clenched his fists. I stared at him fearlessly. Finally, he loosened his fists. Chloe, is it all my fault that we've come to this point? Are you completely blameless? Interesting. A typical scumbag was about to give his speech. Seeing that I didn't say anything, William began to list all my supposed faults and my lack of romantic charm during the 7 years of our marriage. For example, my dressing style wasn't fashionable enough. For example, I couldn't satisfy his special preferences in bed. And for example, I was too strict in checking on him when he didn't come home at night. Listening to him, I couldn't help laughing. William had a sense of powerlessness like punching cotton. What are you laughing at? I summed it up for him in one sentence. In fact, no matter whether it's a cinnabar mole or a white moonlight, once you get it, it's no different from a mosquito bloodstain or plain white rice. William stared at me blankly, opened his mouth, but couldn't say a word. I understood what he meant. Do you think this sounds familiar? In William's confused and bewildered eyes, I clicked on a video on my phone. The video was secretly taken outside the private room door. Inside the private room, there were 3 or 5 people chatting. William, you were the first among us to get married and have been married the longest. Come on and share your feelings, someone said. Then came a casual reply, to be honest, as for cinnabar moles and white moonlights. The tone was somewhat playful and slightly raised. It was William's voice. After a short pause, he said, once you get them, they're no different from mosquito bloodstains or plain white rice. William was sitting on the sofa, and the dim light above his head shone down. He slowly blew out a smoke ring. You don't know. Sometimes I also think that if Chloe hadn't agreed to marry me back then, maybe I could have really loved her for a lifetime. After saying that, he stretched out his long arm, and a pure and lovely girl fell into his arms. The video ended abruptly there. In William's extremely shocked eyes, I put away my phone. Surprised? I heard your remarks back then. I found this video on the computer of the Chloe from 7 years later some time ago. Now that I think about it, the very beginning of a marriage going bad is when people's hearts change. Chloe, I can explain this. Don't, I interrupted him. Now that I think about it, being loved by someone like you for a lifetime is really disgusting. After saying that, I left without looking back. But as if haunted by a ghost, I ran into Ava at the corner. As soon as she saw me, she splashed a glass of water in her hand onto my face. Chloe, you bitch. You've already divorced William, yet you're still pestering him. I closed my eyes and felt it for a moment. This woman Ava still had a bit of a conscience. She used cold water. I wiped the water droplets off my face. Ava, apologize to me immediately. I won't. At first, I thought that since Ava was pregnant, hitting her would be a sin. But she was really asking for trouble. Ava, you asked for it. I resolutely slapped her in the face. Ah. Ava let out a pig-like scream and then rushed towards me. The screams didn't attract William, but they did attract the surrounding classmates and staff. Just like that, Ava and I grabbed each other's hair and started fighting. Blood! There's blood! Suddenly, someone shouted, and everyone subconsciously took a step back. Ava's first reaction was to protect her belly. The baby, my baby! William finally arrived, and everyone made way for him. Ava was like a drowning person grabbing a life-saving straw. William, I'm bleeding. It's our baby. Save our baby quickly. William nervously looked under Ava's body and frowned in confusion. Then he turned his head. The moment he saw me, William looked astonished, even with a bit of comical horror on his face, and couldn't say a word for a long while. And I felt a rush of heat flowing out of my nose. I raised my hand to wipe it. It was blood. I wiped again, and it was still blood. I just couldn't stop it. Then, I started spitting blood from my mouth, uncontrollably. Sharp screams broke out all around. But somehow, I felt that all the noise was gradually fading away. All that remained was silence, such deep silence. At the moment when I was about to close my eyes and fall to the ground, it seemed that William had broken free from some kind of restraint and rushed towards me like a madman, shouting, "Chloe! Chloe!" I woke up again in the hospital. William was sitting beside the hospital bed, his eyes red. "You have cancer. Why didn't you tell me?" He was holding my examination report in his hand. The doctor was standing by the head of the bed. "Girl, such a big thing. Why didn't you tell your husband? Look how worried he is. He's been watching over you for a whole day and night without even closing his eyes." "He's not my husband." My voice was weak, and the doctor didn't hear me. But William heard it, and his face darkened. "At a time like this, please don't be difficult with me, okay? Get out." William didn't move an inch. Now I didn't even have the strength to turn over, so I just closed my eyes. "Chloe? Don't call me that. It makes me sick." William fell silent. But I could still sense that his gaze had been fixed on me. I ignored him and fell into a deep sleep. I knew that I didn't have much time left. Even though I had been undergoing active treatment all along, I still couldn't stop the cancer from spreading, and William just refused to leave. Seeing that I was awake, he looked pleasantly surprised. "Chloe, you're awake? Are you hungry? I've already asked them to make porridge. It'll be ready soon." I interrupted him. "What are you doing here?" William was stunned. I want to take care of you." I sneered. "I don't need it. I'm weak, but I'm not completely unable to move. Even if I really can't move, I'll hire a caregiver myself." "William, you didn't think about taking care of me in the past 7 years. Now that I'm dying, what's the point of you pretending to be affectionate here?" Hearing me say the word "die," William panicked. He strode to my hospital bed and took my hand. "No. Chloe, you won't die. I've already invited the best cancer experts in the world. They will definitely cure your illness. You won't die. Don't say such things anymore." By the end, there was even a bit of a crying tone in his voice. I kept shouting "Get out," while trying to push him away. But I really didn't have any strength left. I couldn't push him at all. And he just wouldn't leave. Whenever he was in the ward, I wouldn't say a word. William was afraid that I would be in a bad mood, so he simply stayed at the door of the ward. He found the best experts to treat me and also hired people to make a special diet plan for me. But my body was still getting weaker day by day. After finishing chemotherapy and just as I was about to return to the ward, I found that Ava had come. In the ward, she was arguing with William. "William, are you really going to disregard everything for Chloe? You're the father of my child. If you do this, what about me and the child?" I hadn't seen her for a while, and her lower abdomen had already swelled slightly. William shook off her hand, looking impatient. "Didn't I tell you long ago to have an abortion?" Ava couldn't believe it. "William, what are you talking about? This is our child. How could I possibly have an abortion?" "I see. Is it because Chloe doesn't want me to give birth? That bitch. It's okay that she couldn't give birth to a child herself. Why should she ask me to have an abortion? As soon as Ava finished speaking, William raised his hand and slapped Ava with a smack. His eyes were full of hatred, and he almost choked Chloe's neck in a rage. Watch your mouth. At this point, Ava simply gave up on herself. Her face flushed red as she struggled under William's hands. Am I wrong? Didn't her child fail to be born? I just sent her some photos of us. Who knew she was so fragile that she went to have an abortion on her own? She deserved it. She asked for it by insisting on competing with me for you. William couldn't believe it. It was you who did it? So what if it was me? William froze on the spot. The hand that was choking Ava slowly loosened. Ava coughed a few times and knelt on the ground. Ava thought he had come to his senses. After a while, she put on a gentle face. William, don't be sad. I did this all because I love you. Although Chloe's child is gone, I'm now pregnant with your child. When Chloe dies and my child is born, our family of 3 can be together every day. William didn't say a word. After a long while, he raised his head, his eyes full of hatred for Ava. What makes you think that I'll let you give birth to my child? As soon as he finished speaking, several bodyguards surrounded Ava. She panicked a bit. What are you going to do? I've said it. Either you have the abortion yourself or I'll ask someone to help you. It seems that you've chosen the latter, Ava screamed. William, how can you do this to me? The bodyguards didn't give her a chance to shout. They dragged her out of the ward. After they left, William finally saw me, who had been standing at the door of the ward all along. His eyes immediately softened. Chloe, you're back? How are you? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? I didn't even look at him and walked straight to the bed. William tried to hold my hand, but I shook it off. He said with a crying tone, Chloe, I know it's my fault. Will you forgive me, please? Chloe told me that you had the abortion because you didn't want to have my child. I really didn't know that she had contacted you before that. I really didn't have anything going on with her back then. I just regarded her as a junior schoolmate. I asked rhetorically, so, for a junior schoolmate, you just left me on the viaduct? Perhaps it was because I had never been properly loved by my own mother. I had thought countless times that if I had a child, I would do my best to be a loving mother. However, after getting pregnant, I chose to have an abortion. I looked at William. At this moment, he suddenly became extremely strange in my eyes. After a while, I pulled up the quilt. Get out. Don't ever show up in front of me again. Whether I lived or died. In this life or the next, I didn't want to meet William ever again. In recent days, almost every inch of my skin was screaming with pain. I couldn't eat or sleep well. I quickly became weak. William still stayed in the ward every day. He watched over me day and night, hardly sleeping at all. What bad luck. I didn't have the strength to drive him away, so I simply closed my eyes and pretended not to see him. Occasionally, when I woke up from a deep sleep, I would find William sitting beside the hospital bed, looking at me with tears in his eyes. What a pitiful look of being affectionate. But I just felt disgusted. Finally, one morning, William couldn't bear the continuous phone calls and left the ward temporarily. To my surprise, I found that all the pain in my body had disappeared. I knew that I was dying. But I was unwilling. My life had just begun. Why should I die like this? Clearly, those who had hurt me were still living well. Perhaps because my wish was too strong. When I opened my eyes again, the William from 7 years ago was holding my hand, preparing to put a ring on my finger. That plain ring was exactly the one that William came to ask me for with Ava 7 years later. I had traveled back in time. My body reacted faster than my mind. By the time I realized that I had traveled back, my hand had already been raised high and slapped William across the face. The jeering around us stopped instantly. William looked at me in shock. Chloe, what's wrong with you? Chloe, how could you hit William? The voices of William and Ava rang out at the same time. I looked around and realized that Ava was actually among the crowd during this proposal. She looked at me with hatred in her eyes, as if I had hurt her most precious thing. I smiled. I took the ring from William's hand and stuffed it into Chloe's hand. don't you want this ring very much? Here you go. And William, you want it too, right? Anyway, I don't want it anymore. Whoever likes to pick up trash can have it. Ava's face turned bright red. I didn't mean that. I laughed. Didn't mean that? What messages did you send to William? Do you want me to show them to you one by one? According to what I found out 7 years later, at this time Ava had already started sending some highly provocative messages to William. Not only did William not refuse, but he even replied occasionally. Hearing my words, Ava panicked instantly. She quickly turned to look at William and saw that the other person was also shocked. Chloe, how did you know? Listen to me explain. It was just a misunderstanding. I said, get out. You two scumbags, go ahead and play however you like. I'm not going to put up with it anymore. I turned around and left. Since God had given me a chance to see these people clearly, this time I definitely wouldn't repeat the same mistakes. I resolutely broke up with William. I blocked all his contact information and moved out of the shared apartment. William couldn't understand why I, who had been happily accepting his proposal 1 second, threw his ring at him and told him to get out the next second. He thought that I had seen his chat records with Ava and apologized over and over again, saying that he had just been confused for a moment. He probably couldn't figure out why I had such a big reaction even though there had been just a few chat messages and no physical contact at all. Friends who knew about this also came to persuade me. They said that William hadn't done anything and it was all Ava's fault. They also said that I was being too fussy and making a big deal out of such a small thing. Only I knew. From the moment he tacitly allowed Ava to send him explicit messages, a corner of his heart had already been occupied by Ava. This corner would grow bigger and bigger, big enough for Ava to have a place in his heart. And what I was doing now was just cutting my losses in time. So this time, I didn't listen to anyone's advice. I firmly stuck to my own idea and would never get back together with William. Moreover, I applied for a postgraduate program at a foreign university. Originally, I had had this opportunity before, but I didn't want to be in a long-distance relationship with William, so I gave it up. But this time, I wouldn't compromise for him anymore. On the day the plane took off, I saw William at the airport. His eyes were red as he grabbed my wrist. He asked me over and over again, why? I asked him in return, what were you thinking when Ava sent you messages? William didn't say a word for a long while, and I broke free from his hand and walked towards the airport without looking back. Many years passed in a flash. During these years, I cut off all contact with William, but I still unavoidably heard news about him from former classmates. I heard that after breaking up with me, William was so depressed that he put his original business plan on hold. And he didn't get together with Ava either. One afternoon, William woke up from his afternoon nap. Suddenly, he went crazy and asked everyone he met, "Where is Chloe?" After learning that I was studying for a postgraduate degree abroad, he was quiet for a long time. Finally, he smiled. That night, he dragged Ava and jumped into the river. Everyone said that William had gone mad. Only I knew that he must have remembered those 7 years. After finishing my postgraduate studies, I joined a large enterprise. With my abilities, I quickly reached the middle and senior management positions in the company. During these years, I paid great attention to my physical health. I would have extremely detailed physical examinations every year. A few years later, during a physical examination, I found a nodule on my lung. Without hesitation, I immediately had it removed. After the removal, it turned out to be minimally invasive lung cancer. Thanks to the early removal and my years of exercise, I recovered well after the operation and there were no problems in the follow-up examinations. However, I still didn't dare to be careless and continued to attach great importance to my physical health. Fortunately, nothing bad happened. After several years of follow-up examinations, no other illnesses were found. In my 30s, I had become a young female entrepreneur. I wasn't married, didn't lack money, and didn't lack male companions either. At class reunions, I would occasionally hear people talking about my past. They felt sorry for me, saying that if I had married William back then, I would surely be very happy now. But I just smiled it off. Because I knew that the one who could bring me happiness had never been anyone else but myself. William's side story. I admit that there was a period of time when I was distracted in our relationship. There's no doubt that the person I loved was Chloe. I had known her for many years. She was passionate and unrestrained, like a raging fire. While Ava was a completely different woman from her. She was gentle, obedient, and most importantly, she would never reject me. I originally thought that I would never betray Chloe in my life, but that's exactly what happened. That day, I had drunk some wine and originally planned to call Chloe. For some reason, I ended up calling Ava instead. By the time I woke up, it was already too late. Ava said that she didn't care about having a formal status and just wanted to stay by my side. She said that she wouldn't tell Chloe, and I couldn't have been more willing and agreed immediately. Later, every time I quarreled with Chloe, I would somehow think of her. She was different from Chloe. She never quarreled with me. No matter what I said, she would say how great I was. So gradually, I started not going home and staying with Ava all day long, even though I knew that Chloe was waiting for me at home. That day, Chloe saw my phone and the chat records that I hadn't deleted completely. She got angry at once, and no matter how I apologized, she wouldn't accept it. Just at that moment, Ava called me. She said that she had sprained her ankle at home and it hurt a lot. I could imagine her pitiful look with tears in her eyes from her tone. Compared with the angry Chloe at that moment, she was so sensible. So without much hesitation, I left Chloe alone on the viaduct. I was such a fool. I shouldn't have done that. I didn't know that Chloe was pregnant. When I saw her again, she was in the hospital, having just finished the abortion operation. Her face was pale and she was sweating coldly. But her eyes were so calm. "Our child is gone," she said. I asked her why. She said, "Just based on our current relationship, even if the child was born, it wouldn't be born into a loving family. A child growing up in such a family would be overshadowed by the shadow of the original family for a lifetime." I knew what she meant because she was the child who had been overshadowed by the original family. But I still couldn't help being angry. That was clearly our child. How could she make the decision on her own? So I went even further and hung out with Ava all the time. I didn't come home at night and took Ava to various public places. I even bought a house for Ava outside. Whenever I didn't want to go home, I would stay there with Ava. Ava said that it was the home for her and me. But I just wanted to laugh. Until that moment, I clearly realized that only when I was with Chloe could it be called a home. I went back to find Chloe. But Chloe drove me out, telling me to go wherever I liked. Feeling irritated, I simply took Ava to buy a ring. The 10-carat diamond ring was what Chloe used to like the most. The more I thought about Chloe, the more annoyed I became. So when Ava suggested going to show it to Chloe, I didn't refuse. She had driven me out, hadn't she? I wanted to let her see that it was just a 10-carat ring. Now I could buy as many as I wanted and give them to whoever I wanted. But I didn't expect that. Chloe suddenly changed. She seemed to have suddenly become the passionate and unrestrained Chloe from 7 years ago. She didn't care about the diamond ring, didn't care about Ava, and didn't even care about me. Not only didn't she care, but she also wanted to divorce me. Wasn't it just a divorce? Couldn't I live without her? After the divorce, I hadn't seen her for a long time. When we met again, I was accompanying Ava for a prenatal checkup. Looking at the pregnant Ava, I couldn't help thinking of the child that Chloe had aborted. If that child were still alive, it should be almost 3 years old by now. What I didn't expect was that Chloe was also in the hospital. I thought that she had come after me, but I was terribly wrong. I didn't expect that she had cancer. After learning this news, my mind went blank. After the doctor's examination, I was told that it was terminal cancer. Before I found out, she had already undergone a lot of treatments. At first, I felt angry. She was so sick. Why did she hide it from me? However, thinking about what I had done over the years, I suddenly realized why she refused to rely on me. I hadn't fulfilled my responsibilities as a husband. Then came the fear. I had never thought that I would lose Chloe. It sounded ridiculous, but at that moment, I suddenly realized that I loved her. I loved her ever since I first met her over 10 years ago. Even when I was with Ava, I still loved her. But my love for her was buried in these 7 years and even more buried under my desire for Ava. I was such a fool. I also knew that Chloe didn't love me anymore. When she looked at me, there was nothing in her eyes except disgust. There wasn't even hatred. I found the best cancer experts overnight. Whether it cost money or time, as long as Chloe could be cured, I was willing to give everything I had. I knew that she had never given up the hope of living. But no matter how actively she cooperated with the treatment, she still withered away bit by bit like a fading flower. Chloe died. After she died, I suddenly felt that everything had lost its meaning. Whether it was my lover or my child, I had nothing left. I forced Ava to have an abortion, and then I was set up by my rivals and lost all my company's assets. I became a penniless pauper. Later, one late night, I was stabbed over a dozen times by Ava at the door of my house. She said that I deserved to go to hell. I think she was right. Amid the sound of police sirens, I closed my eyes. Chloe, Chloe. If there is an afterlife, I hope you can shine brightly. Please don't ever meet me again.